What you want to say about the baby?
Good time, baby.
Right now, we were having some new information regarding the death of 4-year-old Javeayah Harris. Not long ago, News 19 obtained the 911 call that Aiken County deputies say Harris's mother made on the night she was reported missing. That was back on June 30th. But as we have now learned this past weekend from investigators, the little girl had been dead for weeks at that point. That's what they shared with us.
On the warm evening of June 30th, 2026, a call to the Aiken County Sheriff's Office set off a desperate search for a little girl who, according to her family, had disappeared without a trace.
Ma'am, I don't have one. My phone is not on, but I can still call 911.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Okay, I'm on the way to you. Just to confirm, where was she in the house when you saw her last?
No, she wasn't in the house, ma'am. She been playing outside today. And she asked me, can she play for a little bit more before it got dark?
The frantic report detailed that 4-year-old Javeayah Harris was missing from the area of Hillsborough Street and Ridgecrest Road in Aiken County, South Carolina. Within minutes, deputies were on their way. The emergency dispatcher broadcasted the initial description across regional law enforcement channels, noting that the toddler was last seen wearing pink Minnie Mouse pajamas and brightly colored footwear, with her hair styled in distinctive pink braids. As the report spread through those law enforcement channels, additional resources were immediately requested. The initial assessment of the situation was incredibly dire. When a child of that age wanders into a semi-rural environment as night falls, the dangers are immense, ranging from dense brush and localized wildlife to fluctuating overnight temperatures. For everyone watching those first hours unfold, it appeared to be a frantic race against time. The urgency of a lost toddler drove one of the largest and most intensive search efforts the county had organized in recent memory. The public saw officers moving through neighborhoods, wooded property, and open land. Missing child alerts circulated widely across television broadcasts and social media platforms. Parents shared Javeayah's photograph, believing that one person might recognize her and provide the vital tip investigators needed. Every passing hour increased the community's concern, but there was still a profound sense of hope. Search teams, K-9 units, drones, helicopters, investigators from the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, and agents from the FBI all joined the massive effort. Volunteers gathered hoping they could help bring a child home safely. Cases involving young children demand immediate action because every single minute can make a difference. If you appreciate reporting that focuses on verified facts, official records, and careful investigation rather than rumors circulating online, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. We follow developing cases from the first report through the courtroom process, bringing you confirmed updates as they become available. And while you're here, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and which unanswered question you believe investigators still need to resolve in the Javeayah Harris case. Overhead, aviation units utilized advanced thermal imaging cameras, attempting to detect any localized heat signatures radiating from the thick canopy below. On the ground, tracking dogs pushed through the briars, attempting to isolate the scent of the missing girl. Local religious centers, such as the nearby Bethel Baptist Church, opened their facilities in the middle of the night to serve as temporary command posts, offering shelter, air conditioning, and hydration for the exhausted first responders. However, due to the delicate nature of tracking dogs and the absolute necessity of preserving physical evidence, authorities requested that civilian volunteers stand down from the primary grid perimeters. Instead, residents were urged to carefully comb through their own private properties, inspecting outbuildings, crawl spaces, and parked vehicles where a frightened child might seek refuge. While search teams covered thousands of acres in the field, detectives assigned to the investigation were carrying out another task that received far less attention. Every missing child report requires investigators to establish a completely accurate timeline. Detectives had to work backward, reconstructing weeks of activity to determine what had taken place before anyone contacted law enforcement. They compare statements with physical evidence, interview witnesses, review available digital records, and determine when the child was last independently seen. That process can either confirm the original account or reveal that events unfolded differently from what was first reported. One of the first priorities for detectives was establishing when Javeayah Harris had last been seen alive by someone completely outside her immediate household. That question may sound straightforward, but in criminal investigations involving young children, it can become one of the most difficult to answer. Children who are not yet enrolled in public school or structured daycare programs may have fewer daily interactions with teachers, neighbors, or other adults who can independently verify when they were last seen. Investigators therefore examine every available source of information, including relatives, neighbors, medical records, electronic data, and surveillance footage, to identify the last confirmed sighting. As they reviewed neighborhood security cameras, automated license plate readers, and household wireless router logs, a deeply troubling reality began to emerge. The physical evidence collected on the ground simply did not align with a fresh disappearance. The tracking dogs failed to isolate a recent scent trail leading away from the property. More alarmingly, there was a total absence of proof that the child had been seen outside the home by any third party for weeks prior to the emergency dispatch. Only a few days after the search began, Sheriff Marty Sawyer delivered an announcement that stunned the community.
I'm Aiken County Sheriff Marty Sawyer. And we're gathered here, and I'm gathered here with all these law enforcement partners to make the hardest announcement that I've ever had to make in my 36 years career in law enforcement. I'm deeply saddened to tell you that our investigation and evidence leads us to believe that 4-year-old Javeayah Harris is deceased. It's the outcome that we all feared, and sadly, it's the outcome that we must face. We'll have to face it together as a community. Our search for Javeayah drives on. We are continuing to put massive law enforcement resources to work to recover Javeayah and bring her home. We all hoped and prayed to find her alive. But it's extremely important to bring her home to her family, and it's important to bring her home for us. We are currently searching an area of interest right now, not in Aiken County, and I am not disclosing where that's at. But I'm sure you understand, if in fact Javeayah's body is where we think it is, it's going to be a difficult time for everybody there. And we don't need anybody from the outside of law enforcement trying to access that area. Today I'm announcing that we have arrested Javeayah's parents. We've arrested her dad, 23-year-old Johmarea Harris, and her mom, 22-year-old Michilae Herring, for homicide by child abuse and filing a false police report. Additional charges may be forthcoming. We'll figure that out as the investigation goes further. We have spoken to Javeayah's extended family, and we'd ask that you respect their privacy. We can only imagine what they're going through. We put every resource available to find Javeayah and to bring her home safely. I want you to pay close attention to these next two sentences. This is very important. Sadly, the night of the 911 call on June 30th, when that call was made, it was already too late to save Javeayah. At this time, our investigation supports that she had been deceased for at least a month. I want to express my sincere gratitude to every law enforcement agency, local, state, and federal, and all of our volunteer fire departments in Aiken County, who stood alongside us this whole journey for the past 3 or 4 days in this heat and long hours.
Based on evidence collected during the investigation, detectives no longer believed they were looking for a child who had recently disappeared. Instead, investigators said they believed Javeayah had died approximately 1 month before she was reported missing. That finding immediately transformed the investigation from a missing child search into a homicide case. The sheriff addressed a bank of microphones on the morning of July the 4th, describing the revelation as one of the most painful moments of his extensive career in public service. He explicitly stated that by the time the emergency dispatch was triggered on June 30th, it was already far too late to save the little girl. The tactical neighborhood rescue operations were abruptly scaled back. The specialized resources of the federal government and state law enforcement were rapidly rerouted toward a twin objective, focusing on recovering the physical remains and building a comprehensive criminal case for prosecution. Authorities later arrested Javeayah's father, Johmarea Harris, charging him with homicide by child abuse. Javeayah's mother, Michilae Herring, was also charged with homicide by child abuse, along with filing a false police report. The false report charge stemmed directly from the fictitious emergency call that initiated the massive waste of state and federal search resources. Both defendants are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in court. Investigators have continued to emphasize that the case remains active and that many details cannot yet be released because of the ongoing prosecution. The release of arrest warrants added another complex layer to the investigation. According to those court documents, investigators allege that Javeayah suffered fatal injuries inside the family's home sometime between early May and mid-June of 2026. The warrants further allege that emergency medical care was never sought and that both parents made statements during interviews describing what happened. Following their arrests, the two individuals were transported to the local detention center to await their initial legal proceedings. During their bond hearing before a county magistrate judge on the morning of July the 5th, the gravity of their situation became apparent in front of a silent, stunned gallery. The defendants stood quietly as the severe felony charges were formally read into the official court record. Under state statutes, a magistrate judge lacks the authority to set or consider bail for a charge carrying a potential sentence of life imprisonment, such as homicide by child abuse. Consequently, the judge formally denied bond on all counts, ensuring that both parents would remain incarcerated as the case files were transferred to the higher circuit court jurisdiction for future litigation. Those claims outlined by law enforcement are allegations contained in charging documents and will ultimately be examined through the court process rather than determined by public opinion. Experienced detectives rarely rely on a single source of evidence when preparing a criminal case, meaning they must corroborate the reported interview statements with tangible, scientific proof. Physical evidence, forensic examinations, and expert analyses are compared against every word spoken during the interrogation phase to guarantee accuracy.
Yeah, it's sad. It shouldn't happen.
And just a 4-year-old, you know, it's just sad that a 4-year-old is just taken missing and just, you know, we were looking for her to come up, found some kind of a way, but unfortunately it was just a bad circumstance.
Sheriff Sawyer says the search for Javeayah's body remains active.
Today, investigators are still searching for Javeayah's remains while continuing to gather evidence. Search operations have expanded beyond Aiken County into other parts of South Carolina as detectives pursue new leads. As the investigation moves forward, specialized marine units and terrestrial tracking teams face monumental logistical challenges in remote sectors like Fairfield County. Water recovery operations present unique obstacles that are vastly different from searches conducted on solid ground. Dive teams must contend with severe natural variables, including deep shifting currents, zero underwater visibility, submerged timber, and rapidly changing environmental conditions. Marine specialists often deploy high-frequency side-scan sonar arrays to map the beds of rivers and reservoirs, looking for structural anomalies that require direct manual inspection by certified public safety divers. On land, cadaver dogs traverse thick underbrush, explicitly trained to detect the microscopic scent molecules associated with human remains. These specially trained animals can isolate hidden grave sites or disposal points that remain completely invisible to human eyes. Locating the victim is not just about emotional closure, it provides irreplaceable forensic proof for the courtroom. A comprehensive autopsy conducted by a medical examiner can independently confirm the exact mechanism of death, isolate the precise nature of the skeletal trauma, establish a much tighter biological timeline, and definitively invalidate any potential defense claims regarding an accidental death or a sudden unexpected illness. The arrests answered some questions, but they also created many more. What evidence convinced investigators that the original missing person report was false? What happened during the weeks before law enforcement became involved? And where is the little girl whose disappearance brought an entire community together before the investigation took such a heartbreaking turn? Those questions now sit at the center of a case that is far from over. To fully reconstruct the environment in which Javeayah had been living, crime scene specialists document everything with photographs, measurements, and collected evidence so experts can later examine those findings in laboratories. That work often continues long after investigators leave the scene because forensic analysis can take days or even weeks to complete. Because the primary crime scene was not secured until a full month after the alleged fatal assault took place, modern forensic technologies must fill the massive gaps left by the passage of time. Crime scene investigators utilize specialized chemical compounds to locate latent bloodstains that may have been scrubbed away with household bleach or commercial detergents. Even when a surface appears visually immaculate, hemoglobin residues can remain permanently trapped within porous floorboards, baseboards, or drywall, reacting with chemical sprays to emit a distinctive luminescent glow. Simultaneously, digital analysts conduct exhaustive extractions of the suspect's electronic devices. By utilizing advanced software, they can scrape data directly from cellular microchips, bypassing standard security measures to recover deleted text messages, encrypted internet search histories, hidden application data, and time-stamped metadata. This process often unveils a hidden narrative that contradicts the verbal statements given to detectives. In cases of significantly delayed reports, web search histories often prove to be incredibly telling, potentially revealing frantic queries regarding child injuries, medical symptoms, or the biological stages of decomposition. Furthermore, historical cellular telemetry allows engineers to track the physical movements of the suspect's mobile devices during the critical weeks in May and June when the child is believed to have died. If a mobile device traveled to a remote geographical sector during the midnight hours, global positioning coordinates and tower handshakes provide the specialized search teams with a highly targeted operational grid.
Right now, we are having some new information regarding the death of 4-year-old Javeayah Harris. Not long ago, News 19 obtained the 911 call that Aiken County deputies say Harris's mother made on the night she was reported missing. That was back on June 30th. But as we have now learned this past weekend from investigators, the little girl had been dead for weeks at that point. That's what they shared with us. Right now, though, we are sharing a snippet of that 911 call. Have a listen.
Ma'am, I don't have one. My phone is not on, but I can still call 911.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Okay, I'm on the way to you. Just to confirm, where was she in the house when you saw her last?
No, she wasn't in the house, ma'am. She been playing outside today. And she asked me, can she play for a little bit more before it got dark? And I said yes. And I literally, her bath water is in the tub, ran, and dinner is cooking, and I came out here to get her. And I can't even find her.
Okay, is there a certain place she likes to play outside?
Usually in the chicken coop, and that's usually where I find her every day. And I just looked in here, and she's not in here.
We also received the arrest warrants against her mother, 23-year-old Michilae Herring, and her father, Johmarea Harris, who is also 23. Those warrants claim the two confessed to their roles regarding her death. Deputies say the parents knew their daughter was hurt but did not seek medical attention too. The warrants also stating the child died sometime between May 1st and June 15th and that her body remained at the home for weeks. The documents go on to state that the mother admitted she disposed of the little girl's remains at another location away from the home. This past weekend, both were arrested, though, and charged with homicide by child abuse, and they went before a judge for the very first time. That was on Sunday. Meanwhile, we also learned today that the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, DNR, they searched an area over in Fairfield County in connection with this ongoing investigation. But right now, it's unclear what they were searching for.
To fully grasp the trajectory of the upcoming trial, one must closely examine the specific legal framework under which the defendants are charged. The crime of homicide by child abuse is a distinct legal classification that is entirely separate from traditional voluntary manslaughter or common law murder. The architecture of this specific state statute provides prosecutors with two distinct pathways to prove their case before a jury of peers. The first pathway involves the direct commission of severe abuse, requiring the state to prove that a parent or legal guardian deliberately inflicted extreme physical harm that directly led to the child's demise. The second pathway involves criminal omission through extreme neglect, requiring prosecutors to demonstrate that a parent knowingly failed to provide the necessary medical care, nutrition, or basic protection required to sustain the child's life. Based on the initial charging documents, the prosecution appears to be leveraging both concepts simultaneously. The state alleges that a violent act of physical abuse occurred, which was subsequently compounded by a catastrophic period of neglect where the injured child was abandoned to succumb to her trauma without any professional medical intervention. For the defense attorneys, the primary legal battlegrounds will likely center around the admissibility of the statements made during the parental interviews. Defense counsel will heavily scrutinize whether constitutional rights were properly observed, evaluating if the alleged confessions were given voluntarily or under undue psychological duress while in police custody. Throughout the investigation, Sheriff Marty Sawyer has repeatedly acknowledged the absolute dedication of the officers, investigators, and volunteers who committed countless hours to the search. He has also expressed deep appreciation for the public's assistance, noting that tips from community members continue to be reviewed whenever they are received. The massive mobilization of resources, from the initial midnight emergency call to the complex hydrographic recovery operations, highlights the unwavering commitment of law enforcement to protect the most vulnerable members of society. Although much of the evidence remains sealed from public view, the charges filed against the parents indicate that investigators believe they developed sufficient probable cause to move forward with aggressive criminal prosecution. Probable cause is not proof of guilt. It is simply the legal standard that allows prosecutors to file charges when the available evidence reasonably suggests that a crime has occurred and that the accused may have committed it. The much higher standard of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt will only be addressed if the case proceeds to trial, where both the prosecution and the defense will have the opportunity to present their respective evidence before a jury. The transformation of this case from a frantic rescue mission into a grim judicial process has left a permanent scar on the surrounding region. The hundreds of citizens who initially volunteered their time, scoured their properties, and prayed for a safe recovery were ultimately forced to confront a reality where the primary caregivers are alleged to be the architects of the tragedy. If you value carefully researched true crime documentaries built on verified reporting, official statements, and court records instead of rumors or sensational claims, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. We will continue following this case and other major investigations, bringing you confirmed developments as they become available. If you've stayed with us until the end, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what you believe will be the most important piece of evidence presented when this case eventually reaches trial.